think most everybody's in Eastern time, but maybe a few people are not. All right, well, I want to welcome you. I'm Kevin Czajkowski. I'm a professor at the University of Toledo in the Department of Geography and Planning. And tonight we're going to have, I think it's our third Be Wet NOAA webinar. It's also associated with Globe Mission Earth. And well, I guess I'll start by sharing. I always use PowerPoint. Maybe it's a crutch for me, but let's see if I can get it to work on my computer. Let's see. Yeah, my email. Okay. Almost there. One of these days I have to get a new computer because it slowly brings everything up. All right, so I'm not sure. Abby Smith is supposed to talk about implementing this in her classroom, but she's not on. So I wonder if she's having trouble getting on. So hopefully, Janet, you'll monitor your email. So as I mentioned, this is part of Globe Mission Earth. So what is Globe Mission Earth? So it's a partnership between all these groups: University of Toledo, Boston University, WestEd, UC Berkeley, Tennessee State, and NASA Langley in Virginia. And this is our reach map. This is one of the things we have to do for NASA is show all the people that we work with. So kind of break out here for Toledo. And we have John on the line from New Jersey. So Palmyra Cove Nature Center, they have their reach here in New Jersey. NASA Langley, etc. Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay, so our funding for this program is provided by NOAA, and it's the BWET program. It's the Bay Watershed Education and Training Program, and it's to engage K-12 students in meaningful watershed educational experiences, and this is part of doing that. Today, the BWET program posted our like a Facebook post of our program, and here's a link to it. Let's see. I wonder if at some point at the end or some point in my talk, I'll put things in the chat box like links, and that way we'll get to so you can go to those websites. All right, so why are we here? One reason is to have students do projects, doing authentic science, and I want to just show the different things where students can present. So one is the International Virtual Science Symposia, which has a deadline of March 10th. If you want to post projects to Globe, they have to be uploaded March 10th. And for that one, there's scientists all over the world that review the projects. And there's the students get graded on a 4-star basis. And then for our local teachers, the Defiance College Symposium is coming up March 17th. You can still register. I know there's a few teachers on the line that are in the Defiance area. So please register if you plan to have students come and present. And that's between 1 and 3, I think, in the afternoon on March 17th. And then May 6th, we have the Satellites Conference at the University of Toledo. We don't have the registration page up for that yet. I think next week we will. Of course, then there's the regional symposia for Globe. And the one for the Midwest is in Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin, May 1st through 3rd. And we have a bus going from the Detroit-Toledo area. All right, and lastly, the annual meeting is July 12th through 16th. I encourage anybody to go if you can. The challenge for students is that they have to be chosen to go. So the students have to present at one of these other opportunities and then be chosen to get funding to go. So they're limiting the number of students going to Washington. Now, why do we do all this? So this is a picture of a science conference I go to each year, called the American Geophysical Union. Usually it's in San Francisco. And this year at the conference, I believe there were 28,000 scientists. This is the major climate change conference. But there's so many scientists that we can't have all oral presentations. So there's all these posters set up. So that's why we have students making posters showing their research to others, and just kind of, you know, in a similar way that the scientists from around the world do this. Now tonight, I want to talk about how the watershed and the observations students have been taking links to algae on Lake Erie. Now, there's algae all over the world. So if you're not from this region, Ohio, Michigan, you know, there's problems with algae everywhere. It seems to be becoming a growing problem. Now, in 2014, Toledo had a water crisis, and many of the students I visited this past fall knew about the water crisis, which is really interesting. You know, they had maybe a relative whose water got, they couldn't use the water during that time period. And this is some pictures from Tom Bridgman. You can see the satellite image of the algae going out into the lake, way past the, is it Middle Bass Islands and Put-in Bay and all that. And this green, soupy looking stuff is what it is. And then at the bottom here, this is an instrument that is dipped into the water, and it takes the samples, like the temperature, turbidity, as well as the chlorophyll. So of course, algae has chlorophyll in it. This is what the algae blooms have looked like since 2002. And so this, on the left is a y-axis is a severity index, and the year is on the x-axis. You can see up until about 2008, algae wasn't too bad. So they had mild algae blooms. And actually, algae is a good thing because the animals in the lake eat it, right? And that's part of the food chain. But then significant algae blooms started about 2008 and have gotten somewhat worse over time. 2019 was actually, could have been much higher or worse of an algae bloom, but about a million acres of farmland in the Maumee watershed were not planted because it was too wet, and that affected the farmers, of course. But because they weren't planted, then there wasn't phosphorus running into Lake Erie, which is the nutrient for the algae. This is a time series from Ohio State showing the algae bloom over the years. Of course, red is bad, and you can see it in some years. 2011, it really stretched out into the middle of Lake Erie. 2015 was a bad year. Of course, 2014 wasn't the worst year, but the wind was just right to get the water down into the water intake for Lake Erie, for the city of Toledo. So why is this happening? One of the reasons, the main reason that is thought, is that the change in algae over the years has mimicked the change in phosphorus input from the watershed. So here we are from 1970 through the 1980s. We had the Clean Water Act, took phosphorus out of the water a lot, and the phosphorus went down, the algae blooms went down. We have wastewater treatment plants were put in line. But then late 90s into the early 2000s, algae blooms started to get worse, and also the available phosphorus started to get worse. So it's pretty well accepted that the algae is caused by phosphorus running off farmland. This figure here shows the estimate of how much of the phosphorus is coming from the farmland. 85% is felt to be coming from the farmland, or measured, you know, it's been measured, of course. And then there's other sources here like developed land and home sewage treatment systems are a small part, about 3%. And point sources are another source. Now, my research, hang on a second. Let me see if I can mute Janet. Not Janet Vale, Janet Struble. Oh, she just muted her. There you go. Okay, going back. So this is my research, is I use remote sensing and GIS to map agricultural practices. And for instance, we've looked at crop rotation for 10 years, corn, soybeans, and wheat. Tillage practice, no-till, conservation tillage, traditional tillage. Cover crops, which are like winter rye, even winter wheat counts as a cover crop. Buffer strips along the streams and ditches, and then the tile density drainage density. All right. So I've had students drive the Maumee Watershed and take pictures and collect data for about 10 years now. And the dots over here on the map of the Maumee Watershed are where we've taken these observations. One of the things is, if you don't take the observations, time moves on, right? And you can't go back and collect the data too easily. So this is one of the great data sets we have, because I've had students willing to drive around and take pictures. I've done it myself as well, taking my kids with me. Of course, they're older now. I think the last time, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, Timmy helped me out. This is the type of thing we do. We take pictures. We mark down where it is, of course, using GPS. And then what's the tillage practice, what's the crop type, that type of thing. And I just wanted to show you some examples of our data. We've done we haven't worked on the whole Maumee. This is just 3 sub-watersheds, the St. Joseph's, Auglaize, and Blanchard. And the red represents the number, or the fields where corn has been planted 8 to 10 years out of 10 years of crops. So in some of these fields, corn is planted every year. And of course, that's not a good management practice. What you want to do, farmers should be doing, is rotating the crops, because that renews the soil. Corn is a very high phosphorus user, but also farmers have to apply nutrients for the corn to grow. All right, let's see what I can do here. One thing that has changed with the new research, those of you who live in farming areas may have heard that no-till. We want the farmers to use no-till, and that's been about the last 20 years. No-till means that the farmers leave the residue from the crop from the previous years, and they plant their corn, soybeans, or wheat right in that residue, versus traditional tillage is where the ground gets tilled up and it's bare. So no-till helps with with sediment runoff, okay? But what the latest research is showing is that no-till helps to concentrate the nutrients at the top of the soil layer, and so when it rains, the runoff rushes all the nutrients off or a lot of the nutrients off the watershed. So now the farm USDA people are saying we don't want farmers to use no-till, or if they use no-till, there's ways of injecting the nutrients that kind of break up the surface a little bit. And here's one of the maps of our no-till. We have to separate out by corn, soybeans, and wheat to have different, because each the crops has a different color when you're looking at the residue on the surface. All right, and then we also smooth the data. And one of the things we've been doing is then put it to zip codes, because we are matching a survey that Ohio State did with what's actually on the field. So the Ohio State asked farmers about their best management practices, and we're checking or comparing those to see how what farmers think they're doing matches what is actually being done. So I want to switch gears now to talking a little bit about H2 Ohio, which is a plan for investing in basically addressing the algae problem in Lake Erie. There's a lot of money available for farmers to implement best management practices. And one of the things that the university people are suggesting is that monitoring of how well these practices work is a good idea. One thing I've heard from Ohio State researchers is that a wetland, well, one of the best management practices would be to put wetlands in and replace a farm field with wetlands. But what we find is that a wetland can actually be a source of phosphorus versus a sink. So it's always assumed it's a sink, but if you monitor it, we could head that off. All right, so I wanted to show you some data sources. And these are some websites here. Okay, let's see here. So how are we going to do this? Oh, go back. Okay, so the first one, it's Tom Bridgman's data from the University of Toledo. And I'll go to the website. So here's the website. Maybe it's gonna put it in the chat. Let's see how I can do that. Okay, no, I don't see chat. Oh, there's chat. Okay. So you can go to it if my paste works. Okay, well, paste isn't working for me. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so Limnotech, it's a company in Ann Arbor, hosts this data. Let's see, going back to this. And I'm going to, of course, not find the right one. Okay, here it is. So this data set, if you go to Data Explorer, of course, it's based out of the Lake Erie Center at the University of Toledo. You can actually get Tom's data that what Tom, well, actually I start, okay, so I'll have to say, I didn't start it, but I was hired to work at the Lake Erie Center over 20 years ago, and we used to go out on the boat and take water samples. And Tom has continued this. These are the places. This actually started with a professor named Fraley. He did this in the, I think it was 1980s, 1990s. So if you click on one of the sites, 8M is the site, you select your parameter. Let's see if I can get this to work, total algae. And it'll show you a time series of the total algae for that site. And you can switch the sites. Here's the crib, compare the data. So, tonight I wanted to show you some data sources, other data sources that maybe your students can use. Oops, I zoomed in by accident. All right, so that's Tom Bridgman's data. Oh yeah, so Sarah used to work with him as a high school student. That's great. Yeah, Peter is his first name. That's correct. Yeah, so when I started to say, I took the first observation. That's not correct. Peter Fraley was doing it. All right, another data source is Coast Watch. I do remember Bob Vincent and I. Bob Vincent was from Bowling Green University. He's retired now. But we were like the Keystone Cops on a boat. It was kind of hilarious because, okay, we really didn't know what we were doing. But we took observations and published a paper on using satellite imagery to monitor algae in the lake. Okay, and so this is Coast Watch, NOAA. It's a NOAA website of the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab. If you click on MODIS imagery, I like to do this pretty much every day in the winter to monitor the ice cover. And then it's Great Lakes MODIS True Color. All right, I like that. If you click on Synoptic, well, if you do Synoptic, it gives you, it's a lot of data. I'm going to just do Lake Erie. And I'll show you all the images for Lake Erie, in the recent past, a couple of pages worth. Today's images, these come from the MODIS sensor that's on Terra and Aqua Satellites. Terra is 20 years old, and they're talking about, NASA's talking about how to replace the MODIS sensors. But you notice it was cloudy, and we knew it was cloudy today. Let's see, going back to Sunday, we can get a good, that's when there's snow on the ground, right? And it melted really quickly. There was actually some ice in Lake Erie. You can see that. It wasn't a lot, it wasn't very thick, and I'm pretty sure it's all gone now. We can see where the snow was. All right, so I thought that was a good data set to show you. And then the last one, let's see. GLOSS, there you go. Great Lakes Observing System. So let's see if I copy this one. Nice lake effect snowband, yeah. Now my parents came for my youngest son's band festival thing. And well, they were gonna come on Thursday or Friday. And I said, well, there's going to be like a blizzard south of Buffalo. So why don't you come? And they're from the Buffalo area. That's where I'm originally from. And I said, well, why don't you come on Wednesday before it gets too bad there? And, and then that's what they did. And it worked out pretty well. All right, the Great Lakes Observing System. What we're finding is some of the buoy data wasn't working for us, or me, I guess. So if we go to this data portal, there's some imagery, satellite imageries, I think is worthwhile looking at. So click on satellite. You see the Coast Watch is right up there. I'm gonna, let's see, other MTRI is what do you say, MITRE. It's part of Michigan Tech, I believe. So this is in Ann Arbor. It's the old, oh, see, now I'm not remembering things. Willow Run Labs near Ypsilanti. And so Michigan Tech now has a remote sensing lab there. So we click on Find on Map. Okay, let's see. Can click on Lake Erie. I can add chlorophyll to the map. So these are algorithms that MITRE has developed. You can see there's a timeline here. So you can scroll down for the last 12 months, and you can see basically the chlorophyll A, which is a sign of algae. Let's see here. Back in the fall, kind of have a lot of reds. All right, so I zipped through these data sources, but hopefully you can get the links out of the chat and explore them. Of course, students, they generally like to explore this stuff. So I guess I would say that. All right, well, so I think Janet, and I had muted you, by the way, that I don't see Abby here. So maybe I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
Oh, and if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat box, of course.
So what I'm going to be talking about are different NOAA resources that teachers can use. And this is the front page of the NOAA website. And I have these different tabs because I will probably get lost. So I find my way back. It is, like any website, just full of materials for anybody to use. So I'm going to start with what an educator would be interested in, because you're going to remember the beginning and the ending and probably not remember much of the middle. So you will go on the website and you'll see these little tabs here. And if you go to the apple, that's for the education. And if you click on the icon, they'll come up. So you've got the weather, climate, and so on. And we're going to go to education first. So when you click on that, you will see the page that you can scroll and find all kinds of information. It's divided up into the multimedia, the resources, being mainly things for teachers. The Office of Education will take you somewhere different. I will show you that later. But under resource collections, you will see a breakdown of what they have. So we have ocean coast, weather and atmosphere, climate, marine life, and since we're talking about the Great Lakes, we'll go to the Great Lakes ecoregion. Now, there's information there, easy for your students to read if you would like them to go through this, but I will show you where there are lesson plans. So there's also telling you how the Great Lakes were formed. You will notice on the side here, we have a center where they have searchable lesson plans according to grade level. Multimedia, the photo gallery is great. We're going to go to the webcam in just a minute because I found that fascinating. And I'm just going to scroll down, and so you can see the information that is all on this main page, talking about the alga blooms. We've got threats to the Great Lakes, and then I'm ending with NOAA teams up with a cruise company. And then we have the education connection. The teachers in our BWET Professional Development during the summer did receive this document on the Great Lakes Literacy Principles. These will be, they're 1 to 8 here. And if you are interested in, targeting one of the literacy principles, notice off to the side, then you can click on, these are hyperlinked, and then you have the different resources here. Notice also they do have webinars for educators. So I'm going to go back, and I wanted to show you the webcams that were the Great Lake webcams I found fascinating, and heard that they were out there, but never bothered to find the location on the in the NOAA website. So here, because we were mainly in the Great Lakes region, then you will see that you've got the cameras locating that are located in the region itself. And so I clicked on Toledo, Ohio, and notice that when you click on Toledo, Ohio, that they will give you, as of today at 8 p.m., they will give you the wind speed, air temperature, what's the wind chill, and you can notice that the webcam is down, but you can go to the images from before. So you can see what's available there at the webcam, and you notice if it's not a clear day, then you're not going to get a clear picture. But I thought that was fascinating that students, you always think you have to go to a field trip, but here from your computer, you can see different images of the webcams that are out there around the Great Lakes region. Notice you have a metadata file also. If you are interested in using any of the data with your students using the data for their research projects, there's this one here that can be used. Okay, so then the next thing I'd like to show you is Kevin was showing you the satellite data, and NOAA has also the data here from the satellites. So they have some that are featured, and then as you scroll down, they will give you some statistical orbiting 1 million miles from Earth, about the NOAA satellites, where to get more information, and then you can do the real-time imagery. So in the map here, you can download the imagery onto your computer if students wanted to use it for the project. Notice that they have the satellite images within the last 24 hours. They have satellite images that are archived. What I liked is it looks, because it's satellite imagery, it really mirrors what you find on the Globe website for the NASA satellite imagery. And so this just gives the students another place where they can get their data. And they have the image of the day. NASA usually has an image of the day. And you can look in the visible, infrared, colorized, the water vapor, and then they have imagery collections, historic events, beautiful places, and the data visualizations. So you can take here the data and visualize it, and download the data actually, and then the students could use it in their research projects. So just to give you some idea of what's available. There is another tab. If I go back to the original, they would, on the tab on the side, where you could go directly to the data website. So talking about data, how are you going to use this data in your classroom? So here is a data in the classroom lesson, and it's a module. And if you've been in our previous webinars with Globe Mission Earth, NASA is also using this term story map. And I like that Noaa is using the same language, so it's not confusing to teachers. So on this page, each module, you're going to have a story map, and we'll go and look at it in a minute, and visit the technology page for a better understanding of the lesson if needed. You have a teacher's guide. What I like is supplemental PowerPoints. They made a point in the lesson itself. What happens if the internet is down that day? Well, you will have PowerPoints. I love that as a teacher of 20 years, I don't have to create my own. And that is another thing when you do professional development with Globe Mission Earth or our BWET program, we provide the teachers with the PowerPoints we use, because why should you recreate what we've already done? And you're welcome to alter it in any way you can. We have the student activity sheets and the science education standards. Now, of course, in Ohio, we're not following the NGSS, but our standards are closely aligned to NGSS. So you probably would be able to find something if your principal required you to identify the standard, which my principal did. It'd be easy for you to fill in that box on your lesson plan if needed. So let me see if I remembered right. Yep. So here's the story maps. So I wouldn't have to remember, I did the tab, so I wouldn't have to remember exactly everything. But I wanted to give you an overview of the type of story maps that they have. So it's a variety, and in different locations of the Earth. And I think if we scroll down, urban development right here is another one. Mapping human uses is interesting. So that gives you some idea of all the different story maps that they have, a wide variety. I'm sure you've any science topic, you could probably match it in this, in any of these story maps here that you're using. So I'm going to go back to this page because I want to show you, since BWET's about water quality, I wanted to show you a lesson on water quality. So you can launch the activity, or you have the parts listed that you could click on depending on what you want to see. Notice that, and I love this. So if you're going to do the level 1 in the lesson plan, you don't need a computer with an internet. Lesson 2, no, you don't need it. Lesson 3, yeah, you're going to need an internet connection. You got to make sure the internet's working that day if you're going to have your students do that. And then they also, additional activities in the teacher's guide, they're just saying that there's no additional activities in the teacher's guide. So I'm going to launch the activity. and this is what you'll see. We have the introduction. I like that they put the vocabulary for the teachers right up front and with a definition, because if it's always good to know the vocabulary, and if you're having students, keep a vocab list. It's right up there for you to use. So there's online activities, and then to access the teacher's guide, visit the data in the classroom website. So just to give you a little idea of what's happening, analyzing temperature data in the estuaries, and they have then this movie to play, and they give you background. What's the objective? Students are going to look at water temperature data and identify daily and seasonal temperature patterns. And then some background information for you. And then the video on the right gives you an introduction to the special protective places. So you really don't have to play the video when you're perusing the lesson to see what you want to use in your classroom. They give you a summary right there. And then these are the activities that go with it. And then the next level gives you a little more background. When I discovered this, I thought, boy, we've got to incorporate this in our water quality training for Globe, because we do the dissolved oxygen test on our streams or lake, wherever we're at with our group. And this would be a nice way of getting some information about what does dissolved oxygen mean. And then as I'm scrolling down, then you see the activities that go with it. Level 3, this talks about salinity. But what I would like to show you is get the data. So right here, as they've done in Globe, they show you and they try to explain to you how you can download and get the data from this website. So you're going to choose your reserve, the ones are in green, choose your station, choose your data, and then get your data. And they explain it here for you. So this is another way of getting other data that your students can use. And then finally, I'll show you the teacher's guide. So they'll have the welcome, and then you have the curriculum with the student worksheets. And there's also online data activities. And they say you can download the water quality PowerPoint. You have data tools, and here's the science standards. And so it's all neatly packed in one location. That's what I liked about it. Okay, next, that when I saw this, if anybody has been to the Globe meetings or been to our PDs, we have the Hollow Globe, where we take and we do an app. Well, Noah has Science on a Sphere also. And this is on Facebook. You go on Facebook and you can see these images live, or in the different NOAA locations in their science centers. They'll have this big display of the globe where you can then visualize the data. Now, earlier it was working, but see, I couldn't get a good, you can see the visualization. It's how the rates of the planets rotate with the Earth in 60 seconds. That was a hard concept for my 8th graders when we were in astronomy, that, you know, the Earth rotates in a 24-hour period, and then other planets rotate at a different speed. And this visualization would really have helped them understand the rotation. And notice Venus is not moving very much because it takes, I can't, like 243 days or to even go around one time. And so I thought this was really great. Also, in the summer, you're looking for professional development, the Educator opportunity page. They list the different opportunities for even pre-service. You don't have to be a full teacher yet. That is out there. Notice BWED is mentioned. And they tell you the audience of the, what, if you have to be a teacher, like in this one, the College of Exploration, you could be an informal educator or a homeschooler. And they tell you that it's online, you know, how long the course is. So if teachers need to get recertification or renew their license, this might be a way of getting some credit online to submit for relicensure. But we can't forget the students. And so notice here that we have student opportunities. And when I look through this, it's not just graduate. If you scroll down, they have undergraduate. And if you keep going, I love these long websites. There's a contest for K-12 students. So they also, this is a one-stop shop for, notice another one for K-12 students. They have a virtual science fair here. Notice that the audience. And it tells you if, what type of opportunity it is. And so they K-12 to postdoc. I won't scroll through them all. So notice when I said there's another way of getting satellite data, here's another way of accessing the satellite data. Just go on the tab and that will take you right to the satellite information. And let's see, I was going to think this is research. So you can ask me questions, but I did not know this. And if you're into cruising, I found out that NOAA has teamed up with Viking. And if you want to do and explore the Great Lakes, hint, hint, Dr. C, they're doing cruises starting in 2022
Oh,
on the Great Lakes.
you want to go on a cruise, Janet?
Yes.
That's funny.
Yeah, but I didn't realize this. I did hear that they were going to start cruises in the Great Lakes, but never identified the company. So I kept an eye on trying to find out what cruise company would be doing the Great Lakes. And I found it today. So go and visit all these different areas on the Great Lakes. And I would think you'd be taking data. Yeah, what a great opportunity. And we've got 2 years to plan.
That sounds like a great idea, actually.
Well, I'm wondering if we could pair up and, you know, work out some kind of arrangement that we could send a group of teachers. I would think maybe they would have a group rate. I never know. So then I was going to, let's see. I lost my share.
While Janet's looking, I know Janet Vale, who's on from Grand Valley State, they have a ship that does research observations. And Janet, if you wanted to say something, that would be great. And then also Steve France. I don't know if you're going to talk about, Janet, the Teacher at Sea program. I think Steve, you went on the Teacher at Sea.
Steve, could I, let me see.
All right. Maybe everybody fell asleep. But
I thought
yeah.
the cruise would wake them up.
I know.
Okay.
And Connie mentioned what she did with data stream in the chat. That's nice. Thank you. Thank you, Connie.
Okay, here's the Teacher at Sea website.
Yeah, it's an interesting program.
So this is, I was trying to look for, I clicked on this one, but it didn't show up. I wanted to see the while you wait. Okay. So for some reason, the image isn't coming up.
Well, Connie, Sarah went to Antarctica. So did Laura Kubiak. I think that was a good trip. And don't get seasick. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna, I have a few websites links I'll put in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
There's Steve. Hi, Steve.
No, I've been awake. I'm just getting the rainbow wheel of computer death here.
Oh, yeah.
I've been trying to post things and I just get rainbows here. So no, Teacher at Sea is phenomenal. It's all expenses paid. You know, even like parking at the airport, every single bit of it. The food is like as good as any cruise ship you ever go on. It's just a really, really awesome time. If anybody has any questions about it, I can help you out with that. Their application time is over. It's more in the fall of the year, but it's a phenomenal time if you get selected to do that.
Janet?
Janet, did you want to?
Oh, yeah, Janet Vale. That's
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can now. Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, we have an outreach program that reaches about 5,000 students per year, and we take them out on Lake Michigan and do some monitoring of, you know, Lake Michigan and also Muskegon Lake, which is, we're out of Muskegon, Michigan. But there are some other exciting events happening. The Lake Guardian is going to host, you know, 15 or so teachers in Lake Michigan this year. And we hope to work with Indiana, Illinois Sea Grant on maybe, you know, having a stop in Muskegon, but they're going to start out from Milwaukee this year. And then the other thing that I'm working on is with the Ohio DNR, and in 2021, there's going to be kind of an exciting field course where teachers are going to be able to go to all 5 Great Lakes and, you know, be able to experience, you know, some science and interacting with researchers and such. So, you know, stay tuned for that one. They are writing a grant proposal kind of as we speak to get funding for that, but hopefully it'll happen in 2021.
Come around here, buddy.
That sounds great.
Yep.
Oh, good. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you, Kevin.
And then the last, I guess we'll wrap up here. And Janet, unless you have something else to talk about.
I finally got the document so I can
Okay.
share it. The one other thing was the user guide, that a PDF download, teaching Great Lakes science lessons and data sets. And it's, you'll find it downloaded automatically, so from the website, but search Teaching Great Lakes Science Guide. And in here, it then has more lessons. It's a PDF that you actually download, and has the lesson plans. Here's the table of contents. Again, about the Great Lakes literacy, explore the lessons, charting and graphing. So if a teacher is not feel comfortable using a lot of things via the web, this is a copy that you can download and print, and notice that the links are active. So if you would like to start at a smaller level, there's this lesson PDF that you can use.
Thanks, Janet. Oh yeah. So Connie wants to know if there's any ideas for going to Antarctica. That's a good question. I also posted Great Lakes water levels, a link to the Army Corps of Engineers. The Great Lakes water levels are up, and that's a big deal. There's a lot of erosion along the coastlines, and doesn't look like they're going to go down anytime soon. Here's another link for the one from the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab in Ann Arbor. That one has a dashboard which you can vary the time scale, which is interesting. You can see how lake levels go up, and they go down, and they go up, and they go down. But Lake Superior drives the whole system to some degree. Whereas when Lake Superior water levels are up right now, that water flows through the other lakes. And so then, Huron in Michigan goes up, and then later Lake Erie goes up, and then later on Lake Ontario goes up.
On the Noaa site, they also had something about the lake levels that you could look at, or with on the left-hand side, you could see the numbers, and then the right side, you could see a graphic. The other thing, there was a webcam for Lake Erie, and it showed a time series of photos where you could see how the water has risen on a coastline out past Cleveland area. Okay. That would be interesting for students to see. They can actually see how the water is rising.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I wanted to close then. Let's see here. Hang on a second. I'll share our links. Okay, so here's all our links to our YouTube page and Facebook, and the Globe page, Globe Mission Earth. I did want to mention that we do have more NOAA funding coming this year, and we're collaborating between University of Toledo, Defiance College, University of Northern Michigan, and Fredonia, SUNY Fredonia, where Mike Jabot. And so then we're going to host or have a collaborative professional development in July. I forgot the time frame, Janet.
20th.
Okay, July 20th.
That week.
And then we'll be rolling out, advertising for that in the next month or so to get people to sign up. We only have funding for 5 people at each site. So it'll be limited, I think.
Right, and there's no money for housing, so you're going to have to be in the area unless you wanted to pay for your own housing at a different location.
Mhm.
The other thing is at the end of the month, March 31st, will be our last Be Wet webinar. And then we're going to have one more Urban Heat Island Effect webinar in April 21.
Right. And yeah, kind of asked, what's it going to be on? It's basically on this NOAA watershed opportunities for students. So we are going to focus more also on stewardship projects. And then our next webinar on March 31st will be on stewardship projects. Basically, you know, the students, we've been having them do research on water quality. But what can they do about it, right? What should you know, some kind of community engagement activity that can help improve water quality. All right, I want to thank everybody for calling in this evening, and I hope it was good for you. And well, we'll hopefully see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.